Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. The national championship is finally here. Georgia, TCU. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you guys for the whole season. It's been a wild season. We've enjoyed talking ball with you guys in the comment section, doing game breakdowns, talking about recruiting. The support you guys have shown truly is special, and we appreciate it. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We're getting into the NFL draft, getting into more college recruiting. We appreciate all the support you guys have shown. But before then, we got to talk the national championship. Dale, I'm going to kick this one off to you. Early takes here.
I mean, this is very much feels like TCU is probably not going to win this game, I think. But I've probably been saying that about TCU for a while, and everybody's been saying that about TCU for a while. They always feel like they come in as underdogs and they just figure it out. I think the national media and everyone else can't quite get over the fact that they came in unranked into the season. Obviously struggled last year, had to get rid of Gary Patterson. And I mean, what Sonny Dykes, Max Duggan, Quentin Johnson, that secondary, the linebacker core, like those units that have played incredible football for TCU, what they're doing is honestly unreal. Like they're just making plays every second when they need them, or almost.
Yeah, this is a team that's been just criminally underrated by Vegas, the national media, people on Twitter saying they don't deserve to be in the national championship game. And they don't really care. They just keep winning football games. And yeah, it might not always be the prettiest thing, but at a certain point, when you're 13-1, you got to stop calling it luck. This team figures out how to win football games. You said it best. They figure out how to make plays on both sides of the ball. And they're going up against a team that's kind of the powerhouse of college football now. I mean, I'm getting big time Alabama vibes from this Georgia football team. Like Kirby Smart post game interview saying, like, we got to get better. Like this was unacceptable. They just won a game to get to the national championship game. He's talking about how they got to get better. Like that doesn't remind you about Nick Saban? I don't know what does. And Georgia's a buzzsaw. And this is going to be a good game. I want to kind of first start on the offensive side of the ball for TCU because we've seen Georgia get got a little bit by some offenses that can put them in conflict. Ohio State did it last night. I think TCU has the chance to do this. First thing I want to talk about is Max Duggan extending plays with his legs because CJ Stroud was able to do that against Georgia last night. Dale, how do you see this TCU offense maybe putting some points up on these Bulldogs?
Well, that's the big thing you mentioned is I don't think Georgia has the defensive line that they had last year, and they're not like swallowing teams like that. So, I mean, when you see them play in Ohio State, when again they didn't always maintain rush lanes, they didn't always get immediate pressure, and when they weren't able to do that, CJ Stroud did do a fairly good job picking them apart. And I think Max Duggan's a better athlete. He's a more willing runner, or he looks to run more. I shouldn't say more willing, but he's more. That's part of a bigger part of his game. And if Georgia doesn't maintain sound like rush lanes and fundamentals in that side of the ball, I think their wideouts at TCU, I should say, will have their chances to get open and make some big plays, just like Ohio State was able to do.
Yeah, and from a standpoint, we're not sure about Kendra Miller. I don't think this TCU team will be able to just traditionally run the football as well as they had most of the year. This is a TCU team that runs the ball really, really well. Kendra Miller is one of the better running backs in the entire country. He obviously has a knee ankle injury. We're not sure what his status is for the national championship game. I don't think people give enough credit for this TCU offensive line, like Steve Avila, Alan Ali. Like that's a very good offensive line. They run the ball very well. They've protected Max Duggan pretty well for most of the year. I'm really excited to see how they can hold up against this Georgia defensive line.
Because Georgia need to bring the heat. I mean, that's how they were able to get after Stroud, is they had to blitz. And in Michigan, that's what Michigan tried to do on TCU. And what TCU was able to do was Max Duggan was able to avoid the rush for just long enough to get his guys open, like Quentin Johnson and everyone else they have. And they were able to hit some monster plays. And if they can do that, which I think you can do, I think this Georgia secondary has probably been their weakness for the past few years. And again, I think it's really, it's not like it's a bad unit, but I mean, when you're nitpicking Georgia, their secondary is probably where you can hurt them, and that's where Ohio State hurt them. And I wonder if they have to blitz and do that, can TCU do what they were able to do against Michigan, hit a couple monster plays.
Yeah, the Quentin Johnston Keely Ringo matchup is going to be really really interesting. Just as an NFL draft fan, for one, like, if you had to build a cornerback to cover Quentin Johnston, it would be Keely Ringo. Like speed, size, athleticism, it's all there. That's going to be a very fun matchup. But I kind of agree with you. This is the biggest thing, and I think Kirby Smart is going to hammer this home in the week of practices. We're keeping Max Duggan in the pocket. Like if CJ Stroud was killing him, extending plays. That's Max Duggan's game. That's not even CJ Stroud's game. CJ Stroud's much more of a pocket passer on time. The ball's coming out on time. He had to extend plays. He was able to hurt Georgia badly. I don't think we'll see as much. At least we'll see an emphasis for Georgia keeping spies in there, maintaining those pass rush gap integrities. Because I don't think Kirby Smart's going to allow Max Duggan to do what CJ Stroud did against Georgia last night.
I mean, because that's what Texas was able to do, is they were able to overwhelm this TCU defense. And
yes,
Texas, again, they have a really good defensive line, and I'm not sure it's better than Georgia's, but if Georgia can do that, I think they can hurt them. That's what honestly Michigan couldn't quite do, is they couldn't dominate them up front with their.
We had to bring extra guys. We couldn't get pressure with 4, and that was what was killing us. I don't think we also.
Yeah. So if Georgia can do it how Texas did it, which was just kind of beat them up front with the front 4 and send the blitzes at good timely manners, but that's probably the recipe. And I mean, we'll see. Georgia, hopefully they'll have Beal and Michael Williams back, which again you kind of mentioned are probably, at least in Michael Williams' case, probably cramps, but they'll probably need those 2 guys to be able to do what they want to do, at least in terms of not needing the blitz every play to generate pressure.
Now, Georgia on offense against TCU's defense, going into before the Michigan game last night, I would have said Georgia's going to road grade. This 3-3-5 defense for TCU versus Georgia's offensive line, and I'm a Michigan fan. I think Georgia's offensive line probably should have won the Joe Moore Award. They have been disgusting all year. Road graders, whether it's Broderick Jones, whether it's Warren McClendon, Cedric Van Pan, this offensive line is dominant. TCU showed that they can kind of hang and stop the run, and I think that 3-3-5 scheme, you get more speed on the field. I think that messes up with some of the blocking schemes. Do you think TCU can hang and kind of stop the run against the Bulldogs here?
Well, this is kind of where I'm at with how TCU stops the run. Is what they were able to do against Michigan was, I mean, they had all their defensive linemen, the 3 of them, in tight. They were all, I think, inside the tackles pretty much all game. And that made it really hard for Michigan to run the ball inside. And that's where they run the football. They don't run a ton of tosses and stretches to the outside. So Michigan, at the times they were able to get to the perimeter, I felt like they did an okay job. I thought Donovan did get on the edge a little bit and hit some plays. But the difference with Georgia is that's what they do. They run a lot of tosses. They use their tight ends to get out and block in space. And their offensive linemen are more adept at running that type of offense because that's what they've done it all year. So I think if TCU is going to line those guys up in tight to stop getting hammered on, I think that gives Georgia a chance to kind of get outside and use their running backs in the way they've used them all year with tosses and other outside run schemes, because that's, I think, where you can hurt this TCU defense if they're going to line up in the way they were against Michigan.
Yeah, the second question I have, and more of just for Georgia, is this was the best I've seen Georgia wide receivers play maybe in the last 2 years. AD, Arian, Brock Bowers, obviously we know him. They're healthy, finally. I mean, most of these guys haven't been able to play consistent football all year, and I think Kirby Smart's whole goal was hey, we're just going to try to grind out this regular season and get all these guys back for when the games really matter. They're all back. They look to be some of the one of the better wide receiving cores in the country. And it's crazy that I'm saying that, but that's how good those wide receivers were playing last night. I think the big question is, can Stetson Bennett hit some of those big plays they hit against Ohio State? And 2, can he avoid giving up some of those big plays and the interceptions? Because TCU, this is an opportunistic defense. They will let you get some yards. You can move the football in this TCU defense. They're going to try to hit those big plays and turnovers. And they have a lot of good guys in the secondary who are ball hawkers. Those linebackers are very good in coverage. Stetson Bennett, can he take advantage of this TCU team? And what do you think there?
And that's the big thing. I think Stetson he was a bit of a tale of 2 halves. I think their running game very much kept him in it in the first half. And then he really did play a good second half, but he made some throws that again, just watching TCU all year, you can't make those throws because when TCU gets those chances, they're taking the ball away, and that's why they've been so successful. And again, you mentioned it. That goes linebackers, safeties, and corners. They're all getting their hands on footballs and taking it away. And I do think people underrate how good Adonai Mitchell is because he hasn't played a ton of steady football all year. But it seems like when he's in these games, and he did it last year against Bama in the title
Yeah.
game, he did it against Ohio State. When Georgia needs a play, he's the guy who makes it. And he's that well-rounded guy. He can do everything. And when he's tight in the red zone, he got open on that route where Georgia needed a guy to make a play. He did it. When they need big plays, he can get vertical and make big plays.
And what was the stat? He hadn't even caught a ball since like week 2 of the regular season. Like that's insane. And like it's almost scary to say he's like kind of knocking the rust off.
He opens it all up. I mean, when they have Bowers, he was pretty much the guy all year for the most part who was giving them steady production. But again, when they get A.D. Mitchell back and then somehow then Arian Smith plays an excellent game and everybody else just looked better and the offense looked more open. I mean, they had guys kind of all over the field at times. It just looked like they were overwhelming Ohio State, who granted they don't have the best secondary. I think we've all seen that. And they have been giving up some plays all year. But I think A.D. Mitchell he's a handful. And the Horned Frogs, again, I think their secondary has been really good, but A.D. Mitchell opens up a lot, and I think that is super helpful for Georgia's offense and their ability to move the ball consistently.
All right, so let's get to the pick here. This is early. TCU coming in as 13-point dogs against Georgia. Where's your lean there with that number?
Honestly, I think TCU is going to be able to score enough to keep it close. I just think they're going to hit some of the big plays they've been hitting. I think their wideouts are good enough to do it. I think Duggan's ability to get out, extend plays is probably a notch above what CJ Stroud has shown all year. And that's ultimately what was hurting Georgia. So I think I don't think TCU is going to win this game because I do think Georgia's pretty clearly the better team. But I think TCU's, I think they're going to make enough plays, keep it close.
See, I wouldn't argue with that. I really wouldn't. TCU's, 10-3 against the spread. This is a team that we've made a lot of money on. We enjoy watching, kind of one of our favorite teams. I think this one might get out of hand, though. You look at that game against Michigan, like 2 pick sixes, fumble on the goal line. If Michigan doesn't make those mistakes, I think Michigan's probably potentially winning that game pretty comfortably.
I know, but you got to make those pick sixes matter. It's like
I don't.
Fumbles and the other goal line stuff. I will say Michigan more gave that to him, but when you play opportunistic defense, I don't think that should be used as like a knock on teams to be like, oh well.
That's true, and then that's like a lot of people.
D. Winters made that play. That's just great football. In that's
fair enough. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think Georgia is going to make those mistakes.
I don't think you gift though.
And then this is my second point is, I think the more important point is like Max Duggan was not very good yesterday.
No.
They hit some big runs. They were run the ball way better than I thought they would at Michigan. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball, especially if Kendre Miller's not in. And second of all, I think that they're going to do a lot better of a job, especially because they were burned so badly with CJ Stroud, keeping Max Duggan in the pocket. And that's where Max Duggan struggles from. Like if you bring heat and he can't get outside the pocket, that's where he struggles from. I think you'll see kind of like what Georgia did last year in the national championship game. They're going to play their best football. They did not play their best football against Ohio State. I think you're going to get a Georgia team that's going to play their best football. And if they play their best football against this TCU team, I struggle to see them covering the 13 points. That being said, TCU fans, give me it in the comment section because
I thought Michigan would cover 7 easy. Everyone's a hater on TCU, but TCU figures it out. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, give me it in the comment section. That would be very fair. I'm very excited to discuss it with you guys too. TCU fans are awesome. We've been having a blast with them all year. So appreciate the support you guys have shown. Again, if you enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be rooting for TCU. I'm just saying, if I'm a betting man, I'm probably going Georgia. But if I am rooting for TCU,
square, that's your problem. You're just
so we appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.